Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Today on the show, we're bringing back Brian Douglas. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. It's a new week. It's Tuesday, so it's we're starting a whole new month and everything.
Yeah, I can't believe it's already March. It's been too much 2022 for 2 months.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Stuff is happening, and it just won't stop. I guess.
Yeah, who's ready for naps? Give me a Z in the chat if you're ready for a nap. Um, but yeah, for folks who aren't familiar with your work, do you want to give us just a little bit of a background on yourself?
Yeah. So BDougie is what I go by on Twitch, BDougieO, and BDougieO on Twitter as well. And Brian Douglas is my given name. So if you need to Google me, that also I've done well in the SEO there. But yeah, my day job is I do DevRel at GitHub. Have a team of advocates. My actual title is director, and we're focused on encouraging folks to use features that GitHub maybe you've never used or leveraged before, things like the API or actions and soon to be packages and code spaces, and actually have a talk on Copilot coming up too as well, which is looking forward to that. Would be my first dive into that. So all things GitHub, but also I'm a big fan of open source. So I've been working on this project like mostly off and on, but now really on in the last like 6 months, called Open Sauce. And it's a path to your next open source contribution. And we've developed a couple, and I say we because we have open source contributors like 60 plus that have been helping me contribute and make this project work. But really just focused around encouraging open source contributions, but connecting folks to repos that are doing a good job.
Nice, nice. Yeah, and I've loved watching the work that you've been doing over there. The open source stuff is super fun. We've seen pizza emotes in the chat. You've definitely you've made an impression on the community. I think it's always fun to kind of watch what you're cooking up. And so, open source is one of those things that I feel like once you're in it, it feels very different than before you're in it. And depending on what part of it you get into, it can also feel very different. So for somebody who's let's start with somebody who's brand new. What not what is open source? I think we can take for granted that open source software is software that anybody can use. It's got permissive licensing for that. But what is open source in terms of its impact on our industry and community?
Yeah, the open source. Yeah, it's a very hard thing to explain open source in general, but open source at its root is the code you can view. It's open source code, but there's also some other mantra around licensing or engagement or sort of best practices and ethics. But at the end of the day, like open source is like people freely giving access to their code and also community as well. And the thing that I've my intro to open source came from I wanted to build a project. I found Ruby on Rails as a way to do it. Found that a lot of the libraries that I can install in the Ruby gems were open source and available and like installable for myself to build the thing I was trying to build. Ended up building that with a very little programming experience. And then I've always had that same approach of like, if I want to build something, I just Google or well, pretty much Google. Yeah, eventually you'll find like a Stack Overflow or a some sort of form a question answer for the question you're asking. And the benefit is like a lot of your guests here, I end up organically finding the guest on Learn with Jason and watching the video and watching how things are built in the open. So yeah, the whole mantra of open source, I'm pretty fluid on what it really needs to mean, because as a person who had a non-traditional background who just wanted to solve a problem and continue to solve problems, I enjoy how open folks are of sharing the sort of secret sauce or the secrets into programming and libraries and packages.
Yeah, yeah. And then open source has had I feel like everybody working in web dev probably has a how open source impacted my career story, right? And
Yeah.
I know for me, like open source was a huge pivotal part of how I got anywhere. Honestly, I started out by, I also have a non-traditional background, and I learned from people in like the W3 schools forum who just were willing
Yeah.
to donate their time and send me some code snippets. And got the real kickstart to my career was when I discovered jQuery, which was an open source project, and it kind of unlocked this door to being able to build way more interactive things, which allowed me to build my agency. I did a lot of WordPress work in my agency. That's another open source project. Just it's kind of incredible if I look back through my progression in this industry, how much of it fully relied on open source. Um, and as I got further in my career too, it shifted the other way where I started releasing open source. I started working on open source, and that opened all these. Like you said, you end up meeting all these people in the community that we look up to and who are building these cool things. They're all in open source, and so you end
Yeah.
up crossing paths, and you kind of build a network this way, and that's a whole other thing too, because like open source is like that's sort of your job, like sort of, I mean, GitHub is
Yeah.
is a company that's heavily reliant on open source as a business thing. And so how has open source impacted like your career and even like the careers of people around you? It feels like this is a pretty big rocket booster in your circle.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I would say that for my career, like my first really foray into open source where I was contributing back into the system was I was trying to build a quick integration for with WebSockets
Mhm.
for inviting folks to my Slack room or my Slack channel. Um, this was like 2014ish, 2015. Don't remember the year, but this was also as Node was like had the split in IOJS and regular Node and ESM, like all the sort of next level features. It was like a split in the community. Mind you, I only just started doing Ruby, so like that was my first job, Ruby on Rails, and I started doing Node.js because I found it was easier to do WebSocket type interactions. So I found from Googling, I found a GitHub repo that solved my problem. It used like Socket.io and had like a wrapper around it for specifically for Slack webhooks. All stuff I had no idea about at that time because I was in a framework mindset. Everything was given to me. Never had to look outside the framework. So my reach out to the maintainer of that project was I didn't know how to get it to run. So I
Mm.
went to his profile, saw his email on his GitHub profile, and then emailed him, not realizing GitHub issues. Like I didn't know GitHub issues was a thing. Because the company I work for, we didn't use issues, we used Jira. So that was the other reason why that existed. But yeah, so I reached out to him. He actually responded back to me and said, "Hey, actually do this and this." Mind you, it was also Saturday, like midnight, and he kept responding back to me like super late. So I stayed up like till like 4 a.m. solving this problem, getting it to work. And I was like, "Wow, thanks so much." He's like, "Yeah, by the way, I'm actually about to head over to a K-pop concert in Thailand." Um, and he sent me an image of him at the concert eventually, and I was like, "Wow, this is amazing!" Like open sources, like not only can you get code, but you can also get free mentorship.
Yeah.
So like that experience kind of set my entire career off, like where I was never shy around for asking questions. I learned how to use GitHub issues, so like I stopped emailing maintainers directly. Uh, please don't do that. Don't DM folks. Like do it out in the open. Because the one thing I learned is that when you ask questions in the open, like people are more like they're more amenable to answer you because they know they
Mm.
can always point to that answer in the future. So like if you're DMing somebody, like a lot of times it's hard to get into open source or find out the secret sauce, which is open sauce, which is if you don't got sauce then you lost is the quote that I have on my website. But yeah, what basically the impact that I got was like it just taught me that I can just reach out. Folks are accessible, and as long as you're providing value, so if the value is ask a public question, not on Twitter, but like in an issue or in a forum where people can actually answer and point back to it, like that's valuable. And
Yeah.
so I spent a lot of time teaching a lot of my new contributors in the project that I just built, like how to interact with the project, how to like ask questions, like how to stop DMing. Like I don't mind taking DMs up front, like to make people feel comfortable. But eventually I've got to teach you how to walk. So like we're gonna walk
Right.
into a public channel together, ask your question there. I'll tell you exactly what question to ask, and then I'll answer it in public. And then now everybody who's watching is now like, oh, I didn't know that. Let me take
Mhm.
that information and better myself.
For sure. So you actually just kind of touched on something where, like, we're talking about the parts we love about open source, but there is the kind of negative connotations of open source where you've got people who are severely overworked. They're kind of just getting verbal abuse all over the place. They're getting pulled in all directions and kind of, featured demands and that sort of thing. So how do you encourage people, or you're talking about how do you ask a question? What are some things that you definitely don't want people to do in open source land, or like some etiquette that you feel like is 101 for somebody who's going into open source?
Yeah, it's the what's the if you want a friend, you got to be a friend, and some etiquette is usually around just being a good participant in the space. So like a lot of times people reach out to me and like I'll tweet out good first issues for my project, and folks will respond and be like, "Hey, is this good for beginners?" And usually the answer is yes. Like if it's a good first issue, my thing is like I want to have an answer in the issue because otherwise it's not a good first issue. Like how
Mm,
you gonna like expect someone to go solve this after a couple weekends? So as far as folks approaching open source, like being friendly but also searching to see if the question's been asked. A lot of times people discount. I don't know if we're moving away from Stack Overflow life. I don't think we are, but like people discount like checking Stack Overflow for questions that they're going to ask. One of the best things you could do is actually ask the question on Stack Overflow, take that link and drop it in the Slack or the Discord, because
mhm.
you have a captive audience. Like you have people who have answers who want to also answer those questions, but they don't want to answer them in a synchronous fashion where everybody's like, you know what? Turns out I can't write test in V. Like, how do I write test in V? And the answer is like V test is the answer. But and one thing that I'm learning right now because my project's written in V now. Um, that was a thing we had to like talk about over and over again. So now we have the answer we can link to in the conversation in thread in the issue. So a lot of times, if we get go like an open source, we get to go back and forth on questions and concerns about the future of the projects or the features or what would be cool. Eventually, we got to take that to the repo. So even like my day job, my whole thing is like if you want to make a decision, send an email or or an issue. But if you just want to have like a conversation, definitely take it to Slack or Discord. Like we can
Yeah,
figure out what the variables are synchronously or async. But eventually, like let's make this record, like put it somewhere where it's searchable. Otherwise,
for
we're gonna have to
sure.
have the same conversation next weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think some things that I've noticed just as I've been doing more and more open source is, like, when somebody comes to me with a question, there are definitely questions that I'm more interested in answering than others, and that's not
Yeah,
necessarily due to the content of the question. A lot of times it's in the way the question is asked, right? And so
yeah,
one of the things that I'm always interested in is like building a good sense as open source citizens of just how to not be a jerk about the way you ask a question. Like, and I'm very guilty of this. When I was earlier on in my career, I would phrase things like, this should be simple, why isn't this working? And as the person who wrote the code that's not working and apparently is not simple, my immediate gut
yeah,
reaction is, okay, write something else then. Like, go build your own library if you don't like this one, right? As opposed to somebody who's like, hey, I'm really trying to figure this out. Here's what I tried before. I think I'm maybe holding this wrong, but I can't get it to work. Could somebody please show me what to do? And then I'm immediately like, oh, no, no, no. Let me show you what you did. Like, here's the code that'll actually solve this problem. And it's such a subtle thing, but the same question asked two different ways is going to get a very different answer. And one of them is going to get you on my crap list.
yeah, yeah. It's the So I used to do sales before switching to full time engineering. So career transition, learn how to code. I shared that a bit of that story. There was a book that everybody in sales reads, which is How to Win Friends and Influence People. So I mentioned this book with a caveat. It was written 100 years ago. Super racist, super misogynistic. So take the gems where you can, or
Yeah.
find it. Hopefully, we can find a different book to recommend. But
Read it with
um,
a sifter.
exactly. But I read the book and I read it quite a few times because the gems that I did take from it is like like in engineering, you've got to convince other people your code's the best, or convince that your code needs to be merged. So you're constantly always trying to sell your code. So in the inverse, where you find issues with the code that's been written, or you find issues with the library, the inclination really at first is like, man, this thing sucks. I can't believe these developers did this. This is gonna let's go use this other newer, flashier JavaScript library. Um,
Mhm.
but my approach and the thing I try to redirect folks into is like don't dog the person who wrote the code. Like it's better what leading a horse to water, that whole analogy. That's basically what was that came out of that book, which is essentially like take the problem and then make the person who you think you're trying to convince think it's their solution. Like you come up with a solution, but be a value. And like usually what I do this, I have a YouTube video on my YouTube account called "How to Get Your PR Reviewed."
Mm.
And the way I set up the structure of my PR messages, which if you're not thinking about what you put in your PR or what you put in the issue, like you're doing it wrong. You got to start with like talk to basically SCQA is my structure. So situation, complication, question, answer. So the situation is like, hey,
Okay.
turns out you can't write test in Vite because you can't use Jest or whatever. You have to bring in Babel, which defeats the purpose of having Vite because Vite's so nice and lightweight. It needs ES build. The complication is a bit of that. Like I tried doing this on this specific use case, doesn't work. Here's the question is how can we write test in Vite? The answer, which we eventually came to, is like Vite test. Had no idea it existed, but someone came through with the answer. So like, what's the step of implementing it? So like in my PR, I'll walk through that in my PR message. And then we can then look at my code that answers like all those answers and the complication. You can now see the story of the code. And
Mhm.
it's the same thing of issue. If you don't have if you open an issue, but you don't have the structure of like why you're opening this issue, like I had an issue open up about progressive web app, making the project a progressive web app, and very very brief and terse issue opens like could you give me a little more? Like, can you show me some value? Because I want to see someone's actually invested in the problem. Otherwise, I've got to close this thing because I don't have the bandwidth to convert this thing to a progressive web app after also converting it from Astro to Vite. So if you could show that you're actually invested in this problem and you had found this, like we'll keep this open. If not, it's a won't fixed and we'll wait for the next person to open it up. And sometimes as a maintainer, you have to be a bit terse and a bit sort of like basically lay the hammer down on some stuff that's just low effort that
Right.
can feel like the questions that you don't feel like asking because it just wasn't set up properly. Like that's the stuff I'm trying to teach my core open source community how to go interact with other projects. So like I had one contributor who opened up a discussion on remix. Like eventually they decided not to move forward with his solution, but like able to set up the stage enough that they can get the issue read and get like
Mhm.
some sort of conversation going. That's success. Because like once you start opening up issues that look valuable to other folks, I can go into your GitHub account and actually look at all your open issues
Right.
and check that out. So if I see that you've opened the same issue about adding a linter to 3 different projects, then I'm just gonna like the value of that goes down. Like I'm gonna see that you're essentially spamming projects with the same sort of pitch. Um, I would prefer like if you just come to me as an earnest contributor, I'm happy to like go work alongside you, give basically the same value that I got when I first contributed my first project of the person responding to my email. Like I'm totally down, like jumping on a Zoom, pairing, answering questions. But it really has to be sort of like, again, if you want to be a friend, sorry, if you want a friend, you got to be a friend type of deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that really does sort of point at a lot of the issues that I've personally encountered where, I if somebody is coming to me and their participation in a space is low effort, like I've never seen you before and you just came here and you asked me for something. And like the thing you asked me for, you don't really even have a good description for what you want. You're just telling me like I need this. Uh I have no incentive or motivation to show up in that space. Like,
Yeah.
how do I know that you have any investment whatsoever in this project? And like, I've been burned before where somebody comes in and they're like, I have this problem, and I go and I fix the problem. And then like, I go back and say, hey, here's the solution to your problem. Like, oh, I migrated off to this other tool because you were too slow. And it's like, cool. That was a great use of my time.
Yeah.
Like, thanks for not telling me any of that. And it's very like, that's I think that's where the burnout for open source maintainers comes in is if we as the consumers of that open source aren't going in with that sense of empathy and saying like, look, I'm trying, you're doing something I like. I'm getting a lot of value out of it, and therefore I want to be part of the community that improves it. I maybe don't have the time or skill to fix the thing that needs to be fixed, but I want to give you enough of a roadmap that you understand that A, this isn't some like you said, I'm not just spamming repos with add a linter, and B, like I'm invested enough that I was willing to at least like run through the problem and create the reproduction of like, hey, here's where the bug happens. If you run this code, you'll see it, like just anything that points me as a contributor to the fact that you spent more than 2 minutes saying like it's broken, fix it. Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, it makes such a big impact on my own sense of like engagement with a given set of issues is how earnest and helpful people are being versus how demanding and you said terse. I think that's a good word.
Yeah. Did you ever do test-driven development back in the day, or
I
do you
I
still do?
have done test driven development. And if anybody ever asks for an interview or something, yes, of course I do test driven development. But no, I don't do test driven.
Okay, yeah. Well, the whole mantra around TDD is like fail fast. So you write a test and you get the test to pass, and then you move on to the next test. And I think it's the same thing when approaching projects and even contributors too as well. So I'm looking to get you to exit out of the project as fast as possible. So like I'll ask the question like, hey, are you willing to put this like contribute to this? Like, do you want help? And I'll show you the ropes of how to like get this plugged into the project. If the answer is like, I don't have time, it's like, cool, awesome. You can now move on. I'll move on. We'll keep the issue open for a bit, but like perhaps this issue is going to get closed in a couple months because I just need to know how invested you are. The other thing that I usually do, because a lot of my projects are sort of React based and have some sort of UI component to it, my first question is like, hey, have you signed up for this? Like, have you logged in with GitHub
Mm,
on the website? Like, so like the progressive web app question. I actually have a video I'll be publishing just when I walk through the PR and how to like make a good contribution. Because I didn't want, I reached out to the person in DMs, was like, hey, thanks so much, but like this, I would love for you to contribute, but also this is kind of like it's a pie in the sky idea. Like we only had 48 people sign up for the thing, so we had 48 people users on the platform. Low chance that any of those 48 folks are going to need a progressive web app. And if they did, they probably would have mentioned it. So my question to them was the person who opened the PR was like, have you actually logged into this thing? And have you logged in on the web? Can you provide metrics or like speed test and stuff like that where things, because like we're using Astro. So like it's still kind of fast. Like it's
mhm.
extremely fast. So yes, progressive web app would be great, but also it's not a paved path right now for Astro. So if I were to implement that, that would be more weekend cycles and like lunchtime development that I would spend on something that my 48 users aren't using. So
Yeah. It that's actually a really good point because something that just as like a point of career literacy as well is like if you can't connect the problem you're solving to actual need, then you're just playing, right? Like and
yeah,
it's fun to play. I build stuff for no purpose all the time, but I'm also not mad when nobody uses it because it wasn't built for that purpose. It was built to entertain me. And sometimes I think that if you're not thinking through who does this benefit, why does this need to exist, you're building things to entertain yourself, but under the impression that it's going to be very useful to lots of people, and then it violates your expectations when you put it out there and somebody's like, who is this for? And you're like, I don't know, but it's definitely useful. And then it kind of hurts your feelings when you realize that you built something that was ultimately useless. Right. And like
yeah,
useless things serve a great purpose, but you want to be clear in your own planning. Like, am I building this because it sounds fun, or am I building this because it solves a problem? Hopefully, the answer is both, right? And that's the best case scenario. But it's also perfectly okay to build something useless to learn and then just stick it on a GitHub repo somewhere as like, hey, I built a useless thing. Use it if you want, but I don't know what it's for. I have a bunch of those if you go through my GitHub.
yeah. I have a I currently own socialcarding.com, and it's not useless yet. I built it because the site that I built, Hot Open Sauce Hot Pizza, we embedded social cards as the cards on the site. So I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if I could just, instead of going to Twitter card preview or whatever it is to check to see if the social card works, I'll build my own. So I have that
Uh,
now, and I've used it a few times, but it actually got really helpful when I needed to save the social card image for something else because I can
mhm,
download images from it. It's a quick and dirty next app. But the one thing I wanted to bring up too as well around this approaching open source and even like providing value is the title of the stream was like finding good first issues or something in the description I gave you. The one thing, the secret sauce is actually opening issues. So if you're looking for good first issues, the best good first issues is you using the tool or the library, finding a limitation when you're getting started. So it could be onboarding, it could be installing, it could just be setting it up into whatever XYZ project it is, but just go
mhm.
use it and then go open up the issue where if there's an issue. Because then what usually happens is like, hey, you can open the issue and be like, hey, here's some screenshots of how I got stuck. Maybe there's like something I'm missing, but here's the issue. And usually what happens, every experience I've done this with, the maintainer comes through or somebody, some contributors like, oh yeah, actually this is the fix. Here's the line of code. Here's what I would write. If you want to fix it real quick, like open up a PR. And I've got
Mm,
countless numbers of contributions of people who just gave me the answer. And I think that in
yeah.
like coding interviews and boot camps and like the mantra is like you have to go find your own answer or you got to go do it on your own or don't look it up, don't open the book for at least a 2 to 6 hours, and then once you get to the 6 hour mark, now you know you're a developer. But at the end of the day, like most maintainers are like the good first issues are the things that they just don't have time to do, but they could
Yeah.
do in like 30 minutes. So I basically got into my contributions to like things like React Native. It
Mhm.
came through because I was an early user and had a problem. Someone gave me an answer, and I was like, "Oh, cool! I'll just open up the PR." And now I'm in the I'm in the vault, the Arctic Code vault, as a React Native contributor one time
Yeah.
because someone gave me an answer.
I love that so much because it really does just point to the fact that like there's no I feel like people look at open source as sometimes as like a strategic thing, a networking thing, a career building thing. And like all strategic and networking career building things, when you start peeling back all the layers of strategy, it just comes down to like be engaged, be helpful, like be kind, and you'll advance. Like that's
Yeah,
really like every, like go out, like participate, show up, be helpful, ask good questions, act in good faith. Like all those things are just being a good person at the end of the day. You show
yeah,
up and you are treating people with respect and you're trying to be helpful and you're just doing things that are interesting to you. And that combination of treating people well and doing things that you're interested in is going to lead to growth. And if like you said, if you're using a project and you find an issue with the project, going and opening that issue is going to, first of all, you're getting in touch with the people who build the project. You're going to get an opportunity to contribute. That's great. Good for your career. It gives you a little more insight into how the thing works. Well, now you're a better developer. That's good for your career. And all you really did was chase an interest and like try to be
yeah,
helpful. And I think that's
yeah.
that's just huge.
The one more secret sauce tip. So I used to play high school football back in the day. I was in newspaper once. I'll share an image on Twitter when I find it. But the I played wide receiver, and the one way to get yourself in the game is like standing right next to the coach. Because usually what happens is like someone gets like a long shot, someone throw it like down the field, and then they're tired. So usually what happens is that person gets pulled out, and whoever's standing next to the coach gets pulled in. Another analogy is like I spent the last 2 weeks with my kids because my wife had to go deal with some family issues. So like for years, I've been second string quarterback when it comes to parenting, and then out of the blue, I'm pulled in the first string because obviously I'm a parent, I'm the dad, I can do the work, and obviously pass with flying colors. We have both kids; they're still alive and happy. But what I'm getting at is the in open source, it can be just sitting in the Discord, watching conversation happen, and like you don't have to
Mhm.
like say, "Hey, I'm here. I want to be a contributor. Tell me exactly what to do. Put me in coach." It's just like literally just standing there, and as you see the questions being asked, like take note of the questions that the constant questions that are continually being asked, And then eventually you'll find the answer because they'll be given eventually. And then the one best contribution you could probably make today as an open source potential contributor is like write a blog post. Like so
Mm.
AJC web dev Anthony, who's sometimes he's hanging out in these chats as well. He would sit in different discords, specifically the Redwood community, and like this be super helpful. And he does this other series on dev.to, where it's like a first look at Vite or a first look at React version 18. He'll just be the first person to write the blog post for for whatever technology that comes out, and like just give like the first look, like walk through the onboarding, walk through the documentation, and give some feedback. Unbelievably valuable. Like
Yeah.
I've talked to Evan Yu, I've talked to I've seen Dan's tweets as well for React. A lot of folks just don't even use the next latest releases. Like they wait until everybody else has done it, which means as they ship new releases for like V2 and V3 or Vue 3 or whatever, like you could be that person to test it out, provide some feedback up front. And as long as you keep showing up and providing value, like you could
Mhm.
not join the core team, but be sort of like first person pulled in when conversations are happening, or first person to pull in when like RFCs are being chatted about. So like there's so
Yeah.
much opportunity, and it's just um, there was something in the chat about life is 80% showing up. Like I think sometimes if you're available and you have like some spare cycles, like showing up in community is valuable. And do it while you're at work too as well. That I would not shy away from contributing and being involved in open source while you're waiting for tests to pass or you got some downtime.
For sure. Yeah, I think like, and a lot of companies now, and I think the number is growing, are starting to really embrace the impact of open source and like how important it actually is. And in some cases, like with GitHub, it's pretty obvious that that's a strategic move. Like open source is built largely on GitHub, and that is a great what's the business word, synergy, right? Like
Yes,
that's
very
and
business.
but then if you think about like all these companies that, they're not software companies, but they build on open source. They're using React every day. They're using Redux. They're using NGRX and Angular and all these tools that are open source tools, right? So getting involved with that as part of your day job is helping your day job, and it's helping you kind of make it you start to have more influence and more ability to like direct things because you'll have a better understanding. So it's a great career growth mood, both community wise, because being active and like helpful in the community is just a great. I mean, that's why I know you, right? Is because you're somebody who's always visible and super helpful and ready to jump in and help people progress. Um, and so, now you're like one of the people that I think of first when I think about good community building. And I don't think that you did that strategically. I don't think you were sitting somewhere with a whiteboard like, all right, how do I become an influencer on social media? You know what I mean? Like, I think that's just who you
Yeah.
are. And that genuine engagement shows up, but also at work. Like we've got people at work who they're not necessarily on Twitter, but they are super engaged in open source, and they are now like really influential in the way that we architect things at work. They really drive our roadmap and they drive our internal tech decisions because they know what's going on. They're plugged in. They've got these back channels open. So, whether your aspirations are community focused or career focused, being just, like you said, show up and pay attention. You don't even necessarily need to like actively participate. You can just be an observer, and there's still huge opportunities to just grow from there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and that the one thing about being at work too as well, and I constantly have the sort of concern and question around like open source. It feels like it has to be your free time. It has to be your nights and weekends. And honestly, it doesn't have to be. If you're in the state of California, like you could do open source all day, every day. Like the company can't tell you no. That's in the state of California, but there are other ways you could sort of have the conversation with your manager, your team, of just saying, "Hey, I actually want to participate. I found a bug. I'm going to go contribute back," because what I've found in my first ever engineering job, just giving talks and participating in the local community, I was able to recruit more people on the team. And it's the same
mm,
thing at when I worked at Netlify, giving a conference talk. on stage was actually a really good recruiting tactic. Once we got to Series A and like our network was tapped out, like just me being in the field made it super helpful to like find other people to work alongside of us. So like you could provide value not only to open source but also to the company you work for by being a contributor and a participant in the community as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, so many good things that come out of this. All right, so I could talk about this in the abstract all day, but I'm really excited to actually dig into some of what you've been building. So let me switch us into pair programming view here. Go
Okay.
to camera 2. All right. And
All right, here we
so
are.
before we are we Oh, okay. Sorry, I got like a weird echo there. Okay, now before we get started, let's do a quick shout out to the sponsors. We've got Jordan here from White Coat Captioning doing the live captioning today. Thank you very much, Jordan, for being here. And that is made possible through the support of our sponsors, Netlify, NX, and Backlight, all kicking in to help make this show possible. Honestly. And we are talking to B Dougie today. So that is B Dougie Yo on Twitter. Make sure you head over there and give a follow. Let me drop this in the chat. And really, that's kind of what I got to lay the foundation here. So you're talking about doing a lot, and I can see a link here to OpenSauce. So OpenSauce
Yep.
is your project that's really kind of built around this, right? So
Yep.
how does one get started here if we're talking about like really moving in?
Yeah, so usually Twitter's great to follow as well. I'm not as active on the open source account. Every now and then we'll do events. I'm hoping to pick up events moving forward, hopefully closer to the summer. But the best place is actually the Discord. So like if you go to opensauce.pizza, there's a link to the Discord. And more than welcome if folks are interested in finding out cool projects, good first issues, or just talk about open source in general. Feel free to join there, like say hello. Again, like the best communities are folks who, like, if you want to be a part of the community, definitely get involved, say hello, and provide insight. When I ask random questions or drop a PR for a review, would love insight there. But the one thing I wanted to talk about, because I've actually, one of my first appearances on Learn with Jason was when I first started taking OpenSauce.pizza seriously. I'd mention it on a whim at the end, actually this site, at the end of a stream, and I was like, oh yeah, I've been doing this thing. It's like basically our CRM for contributing to projects. Since then, I've developed hot OpenSauce.pizza, which we're going to eventually merge everything together into one umbrella, making some like design but also infrastructure decisions. We might actually leverage Redwood to sort of centralize everything together, because it's getting a little bit of a beefier, becoming a beefier project. But hot open sauce pizza is essentially it's finding trending projects. But when I say trending projects, this is only for open source users. So there's obviously
Okay.
changelog nightly and GitHub trending, but hot open sauce pizza is for anybody who's leveraging open source to track their contributions and starring repos and saving projects for later.
Mhm.
Those are the projects that show up on this list. So there is a lot of like JavaScript questions and awesome for beginner type projects here, but then we have some of the staples within the industry like Free Code Camp, 11D. Shout out to Zach, full-time open source contributor or maintainer at this point. And so that's what this is.
This is really cool. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen all this because I don't even remember there being login functionality when we originally talked. So
No,
this is cool.
when originally talked, there was no login. Yeah.
So how does this work? Like, so if I let me see. I'm just gonna jump in here, and I'm gonna log in using my GitHub account. Makes sense.
Yep.
And
So we're
so
using
now that I'm logged in here,
Superbase for auth, just FYI,
nice.
which is also Go True under the hood.
Yeah. Go True is an open source library that kind of started at Netlify, powers Netlify identity, and now Superbase is using it. I think they've done a ton of work to improve it too. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, they've been super active on that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
And sorry, go ahead.
well, I was
I'll
just
let
gonna
you discover.
I'm poking around here, getting a sense here. So if I'm in here and I'm like, oh yeah, I want to upvote 11D,
Yeah.
that
So now you can go to My Votes and you'll see everything you voted on. So you should have 11D now.
nice.
We're working. We actually had an issue open for profile pages, so like you'll be able to see this on your profile in the future. But for now, this is the this is the lowest. What do you call it? The MVP of profile pages right now.
Hmm. And so
But yeah, if you
these
click,
are
yeah,
these
those are the
like,
most recent. Yeah,
and you're pulling this, you said, from like I'm an open source member
yeah,
now because I've logged in. So if I go and make a pull request somewhere, the project that I open a PR against would show up in this list
yeah. Eventually, we're not that far yet.
eventually. Okay.
Uh, at the moment, we're just tracking star data. So if you start
Oh,
a
okay.
project after logging in, like that will show up on the list. We do have a cron that's very slow, just for rate limiting purposes. So it might take a couple days to show up on the list.
Sure.
But we're basically going through seven members at a time, checking their latest stars, adding it to the list if it's unique.
Yeah. This is good. I mean, this is fun. Like I love the discussion that, you're just kind of building a good way to let a community of people who are engaged share the projects that they're excited about. And it's such a simple idea and it's so good. Um,
Yeah, and it's the whole notion here is like it's one thing just looking at all of GitHub and saying, "Oh, cool, I can find cool JavaScript projects, so I can wait until the newsletter or the someone tweets about it." But there are active people who are looking to get involved in open source, and there are also folks who have who are leveled up and have now become stable contributors in certain projects. My idea is like I only want to talk to the people who are learning how to do open source and then graduating from that path, to then go back and teach the people behind them. So that's basically the future of this. We will have, if you go into the GitHub repo, um, and I don't think you can see our project table because, oh, actually you can if you go to github.com/open sauce. So if you go to the actual org account
right?
and then click on projects, there should be a project for 1.0. Okay, so I guess you have to be part of the org to see it. So
Okay.
apologies on that. But if you go back to hot open sauce or open sauce/hot, you will then be able to see in the issues. We have a couple issues marked for planning.
Hmm.
So that first one, and actually the second one is profile pages. Yes. Yeah, so this is our quick mock-up of like what profile pages will look like. Um, I like the idea of being able to highlight stuff like your blog post that you've created for a project. So if there's
Yeah.
like a project, I don't know what project has released. I keep picking on Veet because it's top of mind, but like if you wanted to do like a quick blog post and like, hey, here's how to do a quick thing in Veet, submit that to the community, and then we'll highlight that. So we'll have opportunity to like tweet that out, get more readership, but also this help elevate other people who want to get involved. I've got a plan to eventually create a forum. So forum being the dev.to parent company and platform. Uh, we started the process of doing a open source forum, but the challenge there is moderation. So I actually backed off a bit until I
Hmm.
can confirm like having moderation in the forum first.
Yeah.
But we're planning towards that eventually.
Nice. Okay. So let's see. We got, yeah, some issues here. Um, Man, yeah. All right. So this is cool too because it's pulling in GitHub data, and also you're gonna layer in like your own like non GitHub contributions to the community, and that's yeah, I
Yeah,
like that. This
yeah.
feels like something
It's
that. Go ahead.
yeah. Sorry, I was gonna say. So I was the technical lead on the stars.github.com site.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you're a GitHub star, so if you're a GitHub star to say what's up, because you can see this, but it's behind a login. But if you logged into the star site as a star, you could actually submit your contributions through blog posts. So like it's the same it's the same idea, except it's going to be more broader for open source. And I probably should tell the stars lead that I'm doing this, but basically it's the same idea of how we basically showcase stars work on what they're doing in the community and like what they're sort of they want to showcase. Um, so same thing with open source, except it's open for everybody. You can submit and it's just going to be specific to contribution specific to projects. So as much as I'd love like your intro to open source stuff, like you can definitely share that. But if like you're contributing to a project in a way that it's going to benefit broadly, so like
Hmm.
first looks, or hey, I found a hairy issue, or here's how to connect this thing to that thing. Like that's kind of the stuff I'll be sort of sourcing and reaching out to folks to submit for.
Nice. Very, very cool. All right. So looking at this, we're in the hot and ready here. And
Yeah.
if I'm looking for one of my first contributions, or I want to get involved and actually kind of do something, where do you recommend somebody goes?
Yeah, so at the moment, there's no feature in Hot Open Sauce to Pizza yet. We've been funneling it to Discord. So we do have a Discord for cool projects with the intention that we want to have notifications on the site, but the lowest MVP effort would be pipe it to the Discord channel, which we have cool projects or cool GitHub projects, I think. Actually, no, we have a share your project is what it's called. But
Wait,
we do
we
have
just lost your
some.
audio for a hot second there. Can you
Oh, test two one
wait? A
two.
lot just went weird. We also just lost our captioner for a second. Did my internet just tweak? Everybody, did y'all
Yeah,
just lose the signal for a second?
you did flash for a sec.
Okay, I think I might have just had a weird internet hiccup, so sorry for that, everyone. But it looks like we're back. Jordan, are you good? Yes, Jordan is good. Okay, so sorry everyone for the weirdness. Who knows what's going on? It's raining super hard in Portland today, so I guess we'll just be happy that the lights are still on.
Well, you've got
Okay.
a good mic to not be able to hear that rain outside.
Yeah, I have a lot of so many post-processing things going on this mic right now. Okay, so you were saying,
Yeah,
yeah,
we're probably quite a few weeks away from having the notifications in app, but that's the goal. Is eventually have notifications in the project about things that are happening for good first issues and for cool projects. So
got
there
it.
is
So I just
a
joined the Discord here.
so if you go to the top where it says there should be share your repo.
I might need to go to self roles first because I haven't done anything yet.
Click on README. If you click on README and then
Read me.
click the first icon, it basically says you've read the code of conduct. So
Which
now you're
I
unlocked.
now have. All right, so
Yeah,
now I
yeah,
can
it's
see
pretty
stuff here.
standard. Yeah, so
Project
project
share?
share is where our project notifications are going. So these are right now we're sort of piping through. Every now and then we'll have someone share their project, but we're also looking at r slash cool GitHub projects, which is a wealth of information of like hot and trending projects. It's more
Yeah,
submission based. So if you didn't know about this, definitely follow that Reddit forum. Could you find some early projects trying really cool things out?
very cool. Very, very cool. Okay. And so is there like you said something about finding good first issues. Is there a place where people share those
Yeah.
here? Or?
Yep. And there's also GFI Catchup, which I think is under the open source org. I should probably do a better. It's a new chat that I was testing, so it's not organized properly, probably.
Um, do I need to go to the roles for this?
Under the open source org. Oh, you know what? I need to unlock it. I was testing it, and we were testing it with contributors only. So
Okay.
let me just open it up real quick. Good catch.
We're launching
Uh,
live, everyone.
Now I'm like struggling to remember how to add roles. No, it looks like the. Oh, there we go.
Anthony's in the chat saying hello. What up, Anthony?
Okay. Now you should see that pop up now. So just below. There we
There we
go.
go. All
So
right.
apologies on that. Yeah, we literally we only I just launched it yesterday, publicly, the actual integration. Um, so this is the other thing I mentioned in our email beforehand, but I've got the Ketchup app, and what it does is it actually, when you label an issue good first issue, it's the only feature we have right now is good first issue. It will actually pop it into this Discord with the intention that it will be a notification on hot.opensauce.pizza. So like right now we're just sort of testing the integration, and then we'll connect it to
Yeah.
the actual app itself.
Well, I mean, this is super cool. I'm a big fan of just these kind of multi-platform notifications. I feel like, whenever I want information, like I would probably, I would mute mobile notifications, but I like having a Discord notification channel because my Discord doesn't make noise because I basically stay in the streamer mode at all times.
Yeah.
And so like I can just browse this channel whenever I want, as opposed to my phone vibrating when I get a notification. Or like Slack, you do like Slack ops or email or all those sorts of things. Everybody wants their content in a different place, and I
Yeah.
like that it looks like you're kind of set up from the get-go to put it wherever somebody wants to get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you click on that issue itself, you'll see the project that's actually powering these notifications. It is so this is the issue I marked. The next thing I'm going to do is actually I want to mark PRs for ready for review, because I really
Mm,
believe in crowdsourcing PR reviews. What if, like, my success in this project, but also other projects I maintain, is a lot of times, and the reason why people go to Reddit and other places to notify people of their projects is because it's hard working on stuff alone, because you lose interest or there's less excitement. But if you can get someone else to look at the code you're writing, even if you're the only one writing code there, it's been extremely helpful when trying to figure out some weird. Like I remember years ago, React Router, every single version, I'd always have to like relearn how the world works. Um, so just tweeting out and be like, "Hey, how do you do this in like version 5? Like, what's the new hotness?" Because I don't have time to keep up with all the changes. So I'll
right,
just tweet out. But not everybody has 10,000 followers like myself. Weird flex, but um, like I could tweet out a PR and be like, "Hey, can someone take a look at this PR?" And I'll get reviews, which I love that I can do
right.
that. What I'd like to do is give that to all open source users. So if you have a PR that you want to get reviewed, mark it a label of ready for review, and then it'll get a notification to the open source Discord on it. Any project that has installed the Ketchup app will then send notifications to open source, essentially. So like the goal is eventually build up enough of a content stream of people who need reviews for PRs, but also good first issues, but also identify what cross collaboration opportunities are. Like we're working down a path of we're going to eventually have enough context and data for folks to jump into open source. And a really good first contribution is reviewing PRs as well. I just want to throw that
Absolutely.
out there.
I talk about this just every once in a while it comes up, but one of the things about learning to code is that a lot of it is immersion, right? And you learn the basics by studying, and you learn the more, I don't even know what the right word is, the like the nuances, the art of it, I guess, the instincts, by watching people who know more than you or who have more experience or different experience, because they're going to do things and they're not even going to be thinking about it. It's just some little automatic habit they picked up years ago, and you'll watch them do it and you'll go, "Wait, why did you do that?" And they'll say, "Oh, well, because of this and this," and you go, "Oh my goodness, I just learned something huge." Um, and that's I feel like that's the same reason that I watch cooking videos, is not necessarily because I need somebody to show me how to make whatever dish it is, but because I want to watch an expert chef and see the little things that they do differently than I do, and why their food tastes better than mine, right? And PR reviews are a great way to get that, like, hey, why did you do it this way? Like a lot of times when I do PR reviews, I celebrate stuff. I'm like, this is like, what a great section of code this is. It's so much cleaner than I would have written it. I ask questions. It's like, this I don't get why you did it this way. Like, what was your reasoning here? And then I learned something. And then there's the stuff that you catch. It's like, I'm pretty sure this is a bug. And
Yeah.
that's the truly useful. But then it becomes a two-way street. Like I'm helping, but I'm also learning. And I feel like you pick up a lot of little stuff like that. Yeah, the thought
Yeah.
process. That's what I'm Matthias just said. Yes, the thought process behind why people build things the way they build them is so valuable.
Yeah, yeah, you're missing an opportunity if you don't like go through that process, or like mention enough that it entices people to actually look into, like, oh yeah, you made this approach, but also turns out fetch is embedded in Node. Like, why
Mhm.
not go ahead? Which I have a big pet peeve, which is like, why never ask the question of like, why didn't you do this or why didn't you do that? Because a lot of times people they chose the path because that's the path they discovered. And usually
Mhm.
the why not is because I didn't know. So instead of like, why didn't you do this? Be like, hey, great job. Also wanted to mention there's also some cool features in Node that are now embedded. Or hey, just want to also mention, in addition to the great job you did, if you wanted to clean this up, here's a quick snippet or a sample or another place in the code that we're doing it this way. And it's like, as I was mentoring newer devs on my team, like I'd always try to approach the problem, or sorry, the question of like, hey, you did it wrong, as opposed to like, hey, you did a great job. I also want to show you another cool way of like approaching it, so that way everybody feels like they're all learning in the process, and it's less about
Yeah.
like condemnation.
Yeah, yeah, that like I've heard the term on ops teams of like blame-free problem analysis, right? Where you're not saying like you did something wrong or this was your fault, but rather you're just trying to understand how it can be better next time. And this is very different from like that's in the context of like there was an incident, something went down. But I think in PR review you can bring the same spirit in there. The goal here isn't
Yeah,
to show somebody how smart you are or show who's the better developer or worry about who made mistakes or who didn't, but rather to just say, man, these computers sure are neat. I'd love to learn more about doing more neat stuff with them with you.
yeah, yeah. It's the one of the skills I found out early on is writing blog posts, which I was like pretty
Mhm.
prolific in writing blog content when I was a junior engineer. I've sort of fallen away, and I every once like I've got really a better cadence on the GitHub blog actually recently, but for years I spent way a lot of time not doing it. But what I'm getting at is convincing other people in your PRs like that you made the right decisions or like why you made those decisions. Like sometimes you can take that context and go write a blog post and then
Oh
share
yeah.
it somewhere publicly, and then you get it's a weird flex because you can get validation outside the company you work for, but that validation can help support decisions made moving forward. So like if people are like, I don't know about this TypeScript thing, like maybe we don't want to invest in this project now. And then you write a blog post and everybody's like, hey, yeah, I did TypeScript and we got all these wins within the first 6 months. That becomes to be like a great validation to be like, okay, team, we're going to invest in TypeScript. Let's rewrite the entire app. Hopefully you don't do that. Don't do that, please.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes you just got to burn it all down and start over again, right?
Yeah, which
Which
that's
is
exactly what I
around
feel like.
promotion time, right? That's when we start from scratch.
Yeah, or when you have an
Kidding,
offer in
don't do
hand.
that, chat. Uh, but no, I think, but you're absolutely right. That's something I hadn't even considered. That's just an excellent point. Is how much discussing your code helps you understand your own reasoning and improves your ability to communicate uh, in a way that if we talk about like I keep looping these back to career, and I know that's not really the heart and soul of what we're talking about today, but thinking about career advancement, like once you get past senior engineer, all of the advancement after that is based on how effectively you work with other people. Like senior is
Yeah,
like, can I give you a project, walk away, and you'll get it done? Great. Yes, that's senior. Staff, principal, so on, those are like, hey, can I give you an ambiguous problem and you can go convince a group of engineers to follow you, or you can design an architecture that'll survive the marketing and product reviews and make it to production intact. Like that's all people, that's all communication, and being able to reason through your code and thinking about why did I make the choices I made, and how can I have conversations about the code non-defensively? Like if somebody questions my decision,
yeah,
am I upset that I got questioned, or am I stoked that somebody's invested in making it better? Um, and each of those things, and yeah, being able to pull out blog posts, that's killer. That's such a good
yeah,
idea.
yeah. And I hope you don't mind. I saw Charlie Dev drop a question
Yeah,
about
yeah, jump
major
in.
tech company and PRs being scrutinized. It's the investment of the code and putting it in. So I don't, this might not be a great answer. Definitely ask a ton of people and other people at companies as well, and chat also jump in if you're interested in providing your own anecdote. But I've been spending a lot of time watching like Paul Graham and like YC conversations on YouTube. Actually, and specifically like Peter Thiel for whatever reason showed up in my feed, so I started watching like I've never seen him talk about anything, but I just decided to start watching some like pitches. But what I've learned from VC pitching for startups is that you have to de-risk the investor because they just want to know like, hey, will you successfully make this thing happen, or are you going to take the money and like go twiddle your thumbs and like buy an office in San Francisco or something like that, or lease an office rather. So like with code, it depends on like the how mature the team is, but or how junior the team is. But at the end of the day, you're like de-risking the rest of the team and your manager and the company by for them accepting your code, because like usually in the context of open source, I've gotten some pretty great contributions, like this drive by contributors, and a couple of them that came by recently on my newest project. But then I have to make the decision like, I've never seen you in the Discord, I've never seen you on Twitter, I don't know who you are, but yeah, you've given this awesome code. I 100% guarantee you're gonna disappear. like, and this happens as well as I made a TikTok about senior devs going to FANG companies after mentoring junior engineers, like over and over again. Like you see your senior dev leave to go to a better company, and like now you're it. Um, but a lot of times in open source and even in companies, like you want to make sure the code you're accepting and you're considering is going to be maintained moving down the road. So if you're making some like heavy hitting decisions, that could be challenging for a team to even like wrap their brain around, which is why you can sort of de-risk by writing a blog post, or de-risk by helping out with documentation, or de-risk by like having an engineering sync based on the decisions that you're making. Hoping it's helpful. I know there's a whole nother like this. It's a whole nother can of worms based on like level, skill, gender bias, and stuff like that. But I hope some of those thoughts that I shared was helpful.
No, I think that's yeah. And I also think like there's a difference in a PR review where I've noticed that there are people who are just extremely thorough in their PR reviews, and they're doing it from a place of constructive feedback. And they see themselves as mentors, they see themselves as stewards of good code and all that. And then I've also had people who are really intense with their PRs as a form of like gatekeeping, because they feel like they
Yeah,
control the code and they want to make sure it's done exactly their way and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that for Charlie here, the the question that I would maybe start framing things from is, do you feel like the PR reviews are coming from a good place? And if the answer is yes, then yeah, you're probably just getting like a great amount of team support. If it feels like people are trying to keep your code from getting into the code base, then there's another set of questions to start asking around that, which is like, why are they nervous about you? Are they unwilling to let anybody's code go in? Is it only certain types of code that will come in and cause problems? Like, where are their triggers? Because sometimes it can just be like, I know when I was at IBM, there were devs that I thought had it out for me, and when I dug into the history, I found out they got burned super hard by some project that another team got involved in, and then that team got moved, and they got left with a bunch of code they didn't understand, and they had to work really long nights and weekends to get it back to a point where it was functional, and so they were super protective as a result. Had nothing to do with me, but I was feeling personally attacked, and we were able to back that out and figure out how to work together. And I had other people who just straight up had it out for me. They didn't want my code in their code base. Like, that is what it is, right? But it's important to try to dig in and understand where the motivation is coming from for those really intense PRs, so that you can navigate it from more than just, this doesn't feel right, but more of like, okay, I think I understand some of the history and context and motivation for why I'm getting these types of PRs, because then you can make better decisions. You can, like you said, with de-risking is such a powerful thing for somebody who's nervous, who feels like they got burned by code in the past. And then there's a different kind of de-risking, which is like the, I'm not here to try to take over your project de-risking. There's the
Yeah.
I'm not here to try to bring you the future de-risking. I'm just here trying to get something done. You know, there's all sorts of interesting ways that you can discuss and talk about the code you're trying to do that can, you know, help people get on the same page and feel like we're just trying to build software. We're not playing Game of Thrones here.
Yeah. There was another notion of back when React was kind of taken over in the mid 2010s, about resume driven development as well. And like a couple of us on the engineering team, like we ended up leaving in a couple of months after this, but we did we did do like some heavy hitting React tries and changes and stuff like that as we were interviewing other places. The
Mm,
startup was going under. It's like we saw the writing on the wall. So we did do a bit of resume driven development too as well. But do that in open source. Like go find an open source project to contribute to if that's the case. Like which I think is it's undersold opportunity. If you're at a company and you're like, oh man, we're still in Angular 12 or I don't know what the version of Angular is, but like I want to go try the new Vue. The best place you could do that is actually go find a project using Vue, make a
mm.
contribution, and see if you like it. Like see if you can learn something from that experience and like stick around so you can learn outside the job. Do it on Fridays. Do it during lunch or whatever. I'm gonna continue to say this. Like I'm a big fan of writing open source code at work because I think there's a value you can provide back to the company. But if you are concerned about your manager or whatnot or time you put there, have that conversation or come work at GitHub.
Yeah, yeah, right. I mean, this is the thing is I'm it is probably one of the wildest job markets I've ever seen right now.
Oh yeah,
So many opportunities. If you want your job to look a certain way, you've got negotiating power right now. And I think that companies are pretty willing to work with us because, you know, it's so much more expensive to hire somebody new than to keep your existing talent. So if you're the existing talent, like just, you know, be reasonable. Obviously, like you don't want a Lamborghini as a company car, but like some time to work on open source, 10% of your time, that's a perfectly reasonable ask, and one that a lot of companies are willing to support now. So it's one of those you can definitely advocate and make that stuff happen because yeah, I mean, like a lot of us, we got kids, we got families, we got stuff we want to do that's not on the computer, and you shouldn't have to give up your nights and weekends to do the thing. Like this is all advancement. This all benefits your company, right? Like
yeah,
it's not like you're out here, you know, I'm not trying to learn how to play the drums on the company clock. Oh, thank you for the gift subs, Charlie. I appreciate that.
yeah,
But yeah, so I think, you know, there's a lot of opportunity out there for just advancement in so many different directions. Like you know, as a communicator, as in your career and all those things. And yeah, I'm very much like I don't I understand where people come from with the resume driven development thing, but I also like it kind of feels like all development is resume driven development. The work that you
yeah,
do tells people what kind of work you want to do. And if you're, you know, like in your company, if you want to do more like UI design style work, you get involved in those projects. You show the company that that's what you want to be, and they'll think of you first when you take those projects. And you know, the joke I make is that doing like performing well in your job is like winning a pie eating contest where the prize for winning is more pie. And so when you think about what you're taking on and what you're going to excel at as a career, you know, as a developer, make sure it's a flavor of pie you like, because the more of it you do, the more of it you're going to get, right?
yeah. That's actually a great analogy. And I don't know if I feel like I've heard the analogy before. Maybe it was from you, but
It
yeah,
definitely didn't
that's
originate
amazing.
with me, but I say it a lot.
Yeah, but yeah, I stand by that too as well. Like like definitely make sure the pie that you're getting in return and as a reward is the pie that you don't mind hanging out with for the next 2 to 4 years until you're fully vested.
Charlie's suggesting Reese's cheesecake. Chat, what's your favorite kind of pie? I think cheesecake might be the one. Cookies and cream cheesecake, a good like dulce de leche cheesecake. Do any of the
Yeah,
pies that I like, are they not cheesecake? I don't know. I think I might not like pie. I might only like cheesecake.
is pie cheesecake or is that a different? a different
I,
form of
I don't
dessert.
know. It's got a crust. It's who knows. Yeah. Oh yeah, apple pie,
Yeah.
pecan pie. Well, that is a good one. Man, now I just want pie.
Yeah, in Oakland, we've got a I'm like blanking on the pie shop, but got a great pie shop, patisserie. They actually
Mm.
went remote for a bit during the pandemic, and they ended up they went remote, but then showed up in Whole Foods, so they're doing pretty well.
Oh wow.
But yeah, they make a really good pecan pie. So if you're in Oakland, patisserie has a good pecan and also a good rhubarb pie. So if you're a fan of rhubarb, strawberry and rhubarb, that was an excellent choice as well.
All right. Now, well, okay. Now I just want pie. All right. All right. So I'm getting called out for calling cheesecake pie. Look, they're all at the end of the day, they're all sandwiches. Um, let's see. What should we talk about next? Chat, do you have questions for Brian about open source? Like what are you working on? What are you building? And where do you want to go next? Let's hear about it. Brian, while we're waiting for the chat to think and type, what else do you think somebody should focus on? So we looked at, we've got the bot here on open source Discord that's showing good first issues. We've got over here on we've got the hot.opensauce.pizza, if I can find it. Here it is, that is showing
Yeah,
active repos, upvoted repos. We've got the ability to sort by the most upvoted. Great. Yep. Keep on. Wait, did I? Oh, I upvoted it by joining, right? Okay, I got it. But yeah, we've got some good projects here. That's a great project. Let's go. We've got open source itself. Um,
yeah, yeah. Open source, it's a legacy platform, and it's really the track projects. So if you're looking for data on repos of if you want to find good first issues directly at the source, you can filter there. You can also find out contributors. My whole thing is like you want to be able to find out who are the people to reach out to. So I will eventually make that easier moving forward. Of like some like I can do some creative things in the GitHub API. All this is open source, like code's available in readable as well. But I want to do some creative things of like if you approach a project, what is some sort of data that's not being sort of surfaced when you walk into a project and how to contribute. So I want to have like I will eventually have a score on repos based on approachability. So kind of like walk
mm.
score. If you're living like downtown Portland, you could have like a walk score of 99.
Oh.
But it'd be interesting to have like a walk score for repos. So like there are some repos that you probably don't want to contribute to. So I would say like projects like I don't want to point out any. There's some projects like you mentioned NGRX. Like actually, Brandon gave a talk about NGRX when they weren't taking contributions. How they basically set the project up to say like, hey, thanks so much. We're working on a big release. You can open up issues, but like, please no PRs at this moment because we're focused on this release. Like there are situations where and it's okay for projects and maintainers to do that because not every project needs contribution, and that should be also clear when you walk into a project.
That- Man, a walk score for open or OSS repos is such a good idea. That's brilliant.
Yeah,
Because that's really the thing that I'm looking for, right? Is like I'm always looking for where's the project that if I show up, people are going to be receptive, supportive. I'm not going to get yelled at for trying to help. I'm not going to get treated like I'm not very smart because I didn't know all the answers. Like I want to go to projects that are invested in getting contributors. And so having a place that shows like, yeah, these people merge PRs regularly, they're good at code review. Nobody's given them a like, boy, these people are jerks score or whatever that button is
yeah,
that you click. That's brilliant. Brilliant. I want that real bad. Please ship it.
yeah, yeah. I could probably ship it in like a couple months. I've got all the ideas and stuff like up here. I'm slowly creating issues. So if anybody wants to jump in there, like even the algorithm for like how popular projects are, like it's in an issue. Like if you want to see how that works, I tried to borrow from like TikTok and how the for you pages. So it's very similar. If there's a clear connection where someone else on open source also likes the same thing you like and they recently liked it. There's also a recency score as well. of how recent like you approached a project. All
Nice.
that sort of attributed in the algorithm. I'm open to suggestions as well if folks want to add like, hey, this would be cool stuff to put on the profile that's going to be shipped hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Um, but yeah, the walk score is the thing that it's probably closer to the summer that I'll get to it because I'm really focused on user individual contributor experience right now. So like what things can you highlight as an individual contributor for open source projects, and then I'll be working on the maintainer experience. So as a
Nice.
repo maintainer and a project, just general projects, like a walk score will be something that we'll highlight pretty up in front and center.
Cool. Very cool. All right, so we got some questions from the chat. Rollers is asking, how do you pick an open source project and not feel overwhelmed? So the sounds like this repo score would be part of that, but in the
Yeah.
absence of that, what are your heuristics now?
Yeah, it really just comes down to interest. Like I think there, nothing against Hacktoberfest, but the approach is like get everybody through the gate as fast as possible, and then once the gate is closing, everybody walks away and they go back to their daily lives. So it's like kind of like Burning Man, like everybody's into it. But when Burning Man's over, you like go home and you like go call your accountant and go make a VC pitch or whatever. So what I'd like to do is like make open source more like not sustainable in the sense that let's go give money into projects because I think that's a problem that other folks are focusing on, but more of like how do you approach a project and easily find issues or easily feel like you're part of the community. And it really comes down to like step one is probably use the thing. So um, and I'm not a fan of like how everybody also approaches about open source, like go find good first issues, go look at your packets.json. Like I think those are good first steps, but the next step is like go have a conversation, like go find the human
Right.
element of open source. And just as if you were to try to get a job at Netlify today, like you'd probably want to interview there. Like you wouldn't just take an offer without meeting anybody from the team or anybody who you're
Mhm.
going to report to. Like you're going to talk to somebody. So like not every project is built the same, not built with the same people. So like you are valuable to that project. So like show your value and like your interest by saying hello, opening up issues as opposed to looking for issues, but then participating in the
Right.
conversation. So like we're openly talking about the future of open source in public channels. If you have any interest or conversation to provide or any insight, because like we're making strategical decisions on infrastructure and tools, like we're going to use Radix for our UI for a design system. And that's mainly because our current design system's all hand built and it's very
Mhm.
slow to get people to teach them how to contribute. So we want to build on top of established solutions. But during that
Mhm.
conversation, what we did is we had a Discord chat and we walked through all the stuff that people tweeted at me when I put it again 10,000 followers. So I tweeted out, "Hey, what design system tools are you using today? Trying to move off Tailwinds potentially, but like what would work with Tailwinds today?" And so Radix came up as a solution, and so we're gonna move with that, and then we'll discuss if Tailwinds gets removed or if it stays with along with the project. So yeah,
Mhm.
participation, joining a community, it's always hard because like you walk into a meetup or you go to a bar and like you go stand down the wall or you go stand next to somebody you know and you don't come out of your comfort zone until you're comfortable. So
Right.
sometimes it is going to be a bit of like you're going to have to be a wallflower for a little bit until you're comfortable reaching out and saying, "Hey, I've seen you around. Thanks so much for the project. Had a couple questions. Can I open up issues? Like, what is the protocol?" And sometimes that protocol is listed directly in the contributing MD. So like for open source, you could read through it and now you have an idea of like how you can contribute. Our onboarding path is the triage team. So if you want to be part of the triage team, you just say, "Hey, I want to be part of the triage team." We add you on. Now you can label issues. So if you see issues that need to be labeled or need to get some more context or information, like your job is this respond to issues. And then also as new features get shipped, I took this for the Node.js team. They have a release team. Um, as we do PRs, I just asked the triage team to basically review the deploy preview on Netlify and just find that there's any edge cases or any weirdness. Funny enough, when I looked at open source pizza when you had open, like the pizza is like really off center. That's our canary to know something's broken, because that pizza is like it's way off. So something in the design changed, or some update happened, and now it no longer is absolute. It's like floating pizza in the wrong place. So good first issue right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe one other thing to add, rollers, would be look at projects you're already using. Like I
Yeah.
always feel overwhelmed if I try to jump into something new, but if I'm using like I'm working with 11D a lot right now because I just moved over one of my sites to it. And when I go to like read issues and look at the open pull requests and stuff, I actually can kind of see what I understand a little bit more about what's going on because I'm familiar with the terminology and how the system works. But I remember back in the day, I tried to jump in and help on Jest. And I didn't know anything about Babel. I didn't know anything about like Jest. Somebody just said like, "Yeah, we got this issue," and I was like, "Oh, I want to get involved in open source. I'll help with that." And I just hit a wall. Like I eventually had to go back and be like, "I'm so sorry, but I have no idea what I'm doing, and I don't understand this code at all." Right? And that
Definitely
was a
been there.
mistake on my part. Um,
Yeah, it's yes, it's a mistake, but it's also knowing like when you hit that limitation, knowing when to come back. So it's the opposite of what you'd probably do at a job, where it's like don't bother the senior engineers until it's a real problem or something's really broken. And open source is actually better to basically raise the flag earlier. So like it because like usually like most contributions do happen on weekends, so it could be like next Sunday until you can get back to it. So it's always better to give like a status update, like, hey, I did some research. Turns out I have no idea how this parser works. Here's what I found. Anybody has time this week, like just let me know if there's any good documentation or on the parser, or like if you want to write something up quick, like let me know. But like I constantly try to like when I'm contributing in other people's projects, constantly throw up like flags and updates and see update. Hey, I tried this thing in the same comment. I'll just edit the comment and basically add an update. Like, yeah, it does not work. Let me know if you have any insight or anybody else, or you want to point me to somebody else I can chat with. But like
mhm.
the opportunity to get mentorship, but also connect with other folks in the community and the project, and then you'll eventually rub shoulders with somebody who's doing this full time, and then they have like unlimited access to somebody who can like unblock you.
Yeah.
Absolutely great. Like there's so many hairy issues I did. So open source is there's a super base database, but there was so much stuff that I had to like figure out on how to like keep it free. So like the whole cloud for workers thing is intentional because it's 100,000 requests or whatever, 100 million requests before you start charging.
Mhm.
Even like when I was setting up Netlify functions to handle the swag shop, because I didn't want to pay for a $25 like uh, serverless, a function service that I could pay for. I'm like, you know what, Netlify functions, I can make it work in coerce. So I'm like DMing folks like, hey, how can this work? Let me open up an issue, point people to the issue, and then actually Sean, who's at Netlify now, OneGraph, working on the Netlify graph, also was somebody I constantly would be like, hey, I open up an issue at Sean Groves. Hey, by the way, uh, how can I get this to work? And then he would come
Yeah.
through in a couple days and be like, oh yeah, I took a look at this. Actually, turns out it's RBAD. Let me go ahead and ship a new release, and then it'll work for you. And I'm like, dude, could not even like
Yeah.
you're unblocking me by the time I wake up, which is super awesome.
Yeah, so many good experiences with Sean and just open source maintainers in general who are that engaged. Pachi, that is a good point. Pachi says the only real issue with open source is that every time I access, I want to eat pizza. 100%. All
Yeah,
right, so we
pizza
have time
loves
for
you.
one more question, and there's a really good one from Charlie that I wanted to ask you. What are reliable ways to find open source issues that relate to the careers we're after? So, like if a
Oh,
front end dev wants to help with marketing sites, or I mentioned getting into design, how would you recommend going about locating those to build that experience?
yeah. So this is like I'm very tactical about my approach, and I'm very intentional about this. So like maybe this is too on the nose, but like there is Reactathon happening in this May. Like I usually go to whoever's sponsoring. So if I'm looking for like future growth opportunities and I'm looking for like how can I level up my career in a way because at GitHub I'm not working on full-time engineering problems anymore.
Mhm.
So I'll usually go find something that's cool that's out there and someone using it, and then go stalk that project. And usually I find people using it by what they share as sponsors at conferences or
Mhm.
in guest speaking opportunities. The who is it? The Syntax at FM. Usually, one of their sponsors is something that I'm like intrigued enough that I'll go find an example or a sanity project or something that is leveraging tools that I want to get involved in, but I know
Mhm.
I don't want to build this another side project and go maintain it for a couple weekends and then decide to walk away from it. I'll go into one of their templates and be like, oh, how did you do this? Like the next conf. I spent a lot of time trying to dissect how they connected their Discord live into their actual conference website, which
Mhm.
is like now it's a repeatable thing you see everywhere. But I was like, oh yeah, it's cool. So I reached out to Lee and was like, hey Lee, is that open source? He's like, no, not yet. But a week later, it's open source. So I was able to like dig in there and be like, oh cool, this is how this is going to work. So I built a prototype for GitHub that we would never end up using because maintaining stuff is
Yeah.
quickly if I have to maintain it, it's like you know what actually didn't work out. We're gonna move on. Um, but yeah, being intentional and finding the companies and projects and engineers that are doing stuff you want to do, stalking a bit of their projects, which originally that was open sourced. It was a way to stalk projects without
Mhm.
alerting them through GitHub issues or mentions, and hopefully that's a step in the right direction for you.
I think that's yeah, I think that's great. And I think, you also bring up like if you want to work on, say, marketing sites, all these open source community projects, like they need like every open
Yeah,
source project needs a marketing page. Every open source event is looking for help with running their website. Like, go do that kind of work. That builds a resume, and then you can go leverage that with companies as well, right? Like, there's tons of opportunities to get involved in this stuff, and you'll look around, and a lot of this is community effort.
yeah,
Like even the Netlify logo was contributed by the community early on, right?
yeah,
So these are
yep,
things where somebody was like, I want to get involved. They get involved, and it really does, it lives on and it makes a big impact. So that's a really good way to do it. With that, man, we just breezed through 90 minutes. It doesn't feel like we've even started yet, but I it's always so much fun talking to you. I feel like we could go for hours. Do you have any parting words for the chat just to send us off at the end of this episode?
yeah. Yeah. If you want a friend, you got to be a friend. So reach out to me, DM me. Actually answer DMs pretty regularly. I don't. This week's a little crazy for tweeting, but I will respond to you, answer questions as long as you promise to go join a community. So whether it's open source or whether it's this Discord or the Party Corgi Discord, like go get involved somewhere, chat, and be valuable there by just like emojis are a really great way to show value without feeling like you have to go outside your comfort zone. So a like, heart, favorite would go a long way to make impact in other people's communities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, y'all. So this episode, like every episode, has been live captioned. We've had Jordan here from White Coat Captioning all day. Thank you very much. That is made possible by our sponsors, Netlify, NX, and Backlight, all kicking in to make this show possible. And we've got a whole lot of good stuff coming up on the schedule. So please go and check this out. We've got, let's see, I'm out on Thursday, but next week we're coming back with some automatic image creation from a Figma template. That's going to be a lot of fun. Then we got Cassie Evans coming back. We're going to do more animations. That is always a blast. Please mark your calendar for that. And we're going to be putting even more on the schedule, so stay tuned. With that, we're going to go find somebody to raid. Let's see who's live. Let's go see Michael Jolly. How about that, everybody? So stay tuned. We're going to go raid Michael. We will see you all next time.